James Sandbrook, a very, very warm welcome to 10Q interview. I'm incredibly happy to have you on. I think we spoke off air about how I've followed you and sort of seen you knocking around social for quite a while. So this has been a long time in my thought process, and now I've changed this whole kind of creator side of things. I'm very happy to speak to you because
Thanks
you
very
are,
much.
sir, a creator.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. It's good to be here, and I feel very privileged. I don't get asked to go on to many podcasts. It's
Do you
usually
not?
no, it's usually Joe because he's the sort of front man in the marketing meetup. So it's always Joe that people want to speak to. But yeah, I like to say I'm the brains behind it all. It's a complete lie.
Well, you
But
say that, but he spoke very highly of you in when I spoke. I mean, he was episode 2 or 3, I think.
okay.
And he spoke very highly of you. And if I'm not mistaken, to the extent he said the marketing meetup wouldn't be where it is today if it weren't for you.
He's very kind. He's a very kind man. I do like him. Yeah,
But
it's
we're
funny.
not gone.
We play interesting roles. Like Joe is that lovely kind of warm person that everybody wants to feels very comforted by, and he's 11 years younger than me as well, and he sort of engages a slightly younger audience, and he just does the role so well. But I think I'm there more of a I've always been the sort of the guy behind him, giving him a push, giving
Yeah,
him the confidence, just because I've maybe got a little bit more kind of business experience, just giving him the confidence to say, yeah, actually, we can do this,
yeah.
and just giving him a bit of belief, and it's sort of a good little duo in that sense.
I think you
So,
need that. Do you know, I've worked for myself, by myself for quite a while now. And I think I've spoken to other people in a similar situation to you where they're working with someone and it seems like it's amazingly beneficial to have that person to bounce off now and again
yeah,
or when you need it. Yeah.
yeah, 100%, and that's actually one of the things in Human that, which is my video agency, which I struggle with a lot more, is because I'll when I'm editing or working on the business rather than in it,
Yeah.
I'm on my own in that sense. So Joe actually forms that unofficial role as a he's not part of Human, but he's effectively a co-founder because he's that ear that listens, and that shoulder I can cry on when it's all going horribly wrong.
Be careful
Um,
what you say, James. He'll be after stock options before the end of the episode.
oh, he could have him. He could have him. I don't think it'd make him very wealthy, but
Well,
yeah,
you segued nicely there. So let's talk about. So you run a video marketing agency,
yeah.
Human, and I guess so. This podcast is obviously about content creators and how they've got into what they do, the lessons they've learned, and advice they want to share for people who, I guess, would like to follow similar sort of journeys. So, question one for you is why filmmaking? How did you get started with that?
Film's a simple one for me. Throughout my career, it's always been about telling stories. So I came from an account management role was a big chunk of my career. I didn't even know that was sales for probably the first 3 or 4 years. I was just like, hang on, I've got targets now. But it was all about building relationships with people. And when I went in to sell the service that we were offering, it just didn't land with people. It didn't resonate with
What
people.
was the service?
It was a removal service. So I
Okay.
worked with house builders, and house builders would offer free removals through our company
Yeah.
as an incentive to buy one of their houses. So you might get stamp duty, you might get carpets, and you get free removals.
Yeah.
They would then send that on to us. We would then employ removal companies to do all the packing, the unpacking, all that kind of thing. So it was a really good, well sort of liked service, but the salespeople that I was selling to were really busy.
Right.
And so, like, to start going into all the detail of how we do things was like, people are like, I haven't got time for this kind of thing. But if you went in and spoke to them about, like, Mrs. Miggins that you'd just moved,
Yeah.
who, was maybe one of their customers or on another site, and you told their story and you told their emotive story. So, house moving is a huge emotional thing.
Yeah.
If you're talking about boxes and lorries and times and logistics, like, just you see the shutters come down, like, people
Yeah.
are like, I don't care. But if you can say, well, I'm going to help you with your customer care results, and I'm going to deliver a customer on the day that isn't stressed because they've had everything done for them, and they're not going to have to worry about completion dates because we guarantee to move them, and like all these worries that people have.
Yeah.
And then you tell that story of like how they've gone from moving from one house to another, and they're, and it was a piece of cake, or there was a challenge in the middle but we solved it. Like it landed a lot better. It became far more relatable. So I'd go into, I had a big customer, McCarthy and Stone, who were a retirement builder,
Yeah.
and I'd go in and I'd just tell stories about moving customers and customers we'd helped out, and they knew these people, whether they didn't know
Was that a
them.
conscious thing to tell the stories? Did you realize that was
No,
your sales approach?
no, it was from spending years of driving to. I used to do 60 to 70,000 miles a year,
Wowzers.
driving from site to site to site every day, talking to all the sales consultants,
Yeah.
trying to sort of just promote the service. And I just found that people would listen more if I talked about, you know, a customer that we'd moved, or talk about their customers. I would say, we broke a vase, and like they were really upset. But actually, I went to John Lewis and I bought the same vase and I took it there, and they're over the moon now, and they're now sort of our, your biggest fan, and then, oh wow, this is fantastic. And that story then gets shared
Yeah.
amongst their peers, and so you start to build trust. And
But you
so it
didn't know
wasn't
it
a,
was a thing, right?
no, no, not at all. I didn't know it was a thing until probably, so I did that through a lot of my 20s. um, and I moved into, I had a secondment to a branding agency,
Right.
and that was the first kind of clicking of the light switch where I was like, oh, I need to be in a creative environment. Like, it's fine doing sales, you can earn good money, but I'm like,
Had you done anything creative up to that point?
sort of school wise, yes.
Okay.
So musical theatre, did very well at art, all that kind of thing. But then classic thing of like trying to keep your parents happy.
No.
You need to do science.
Yeah.
You need some. So I ended up doing a geography degree, which, when I look back at it, I'm like, I like the outdoors, but I think beyond that, it was it was a bit of a strange one to go down. It should have been,
But you
an
say
art
that,
one.
James. But you know what? You're a similar age to me, and I'm going to sound like a real old man when I say this, but I look at some of these younger kids, or the younger generation, not even kids. That's not fair. But like who have grown up with phones in their pockets that are cameras, and are actually a lot more native to this creative world we live in. Which is why I was asking you, because like video to me is kind of pretty new, a new concept, and
Yeah,
it's something I'm trying to get in. I'd love to have a YouTube channel and do more stuff, and we can talk about your YouTube channel in a bit. But where I was going with that is the options we had to get into that creative field. Like you said, you did a geography degree, but 20 odd
pretty
years
limited.
ago, that there wasn't like
No,
YouTube. There wasn't like even having a video camera. I remember I had this old like Sony disc camera or something. I think at the time that was like, I don't know, 800 quid or something.
yeah.
And it was junks, right? And it's not like the editing. I mean, you can edit on your phone now if you wanted to. Like that stuff wasn't around. So actually, to say he's going to do a geography degree actually was, I don't know, more
Well, I
normal.
think the signs were there. So I did quite a lot of traveling, and I was I had film cameras with me, um, and even before I went traveling, like I used to love taking photos.
Yeah.
I'd spend a fortune in like Boots the chemist, just like queuing up to get your film process, waiting a week, coming back, seeing that half the photos were crap. Um, but I did, I look back if I go in my loft, there's like piles and piles and piles of photos, and I
Oh, really?
used to take photos. I've still got a stack of photos of like me and my mates mountain biking. I think it's just crackers. Like it was just outside my parents' house, but
Yeah.
the signs were there that I enjoyed that kind of thing, but it just got put on the back burner. And I think the big moment was when I worked for a big content agency, and they made films for Adrian Flux Insurance, who are like a
Yeah. Yeah.
niche car insurer.
This was after the sales job.
Yeah, so I did a secondment for a year to a branding agency called Mint, who were brilliant, based over in the East Midlands. Learned a lot about brands and started to get my head into marketing. Realized that I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
My chairman at the time wouldn't let me leave. He was like, "No, I'll pay you whatever you want. You stay, like, but we'll start your own marketing agency." So I started an agency called Fundamental, which was an internal marketing agency for the group of companies that we were part
Okay.
of. So it was all kind of like design stuff because I'd done the branding secondment, and so it was a natural kind of segue. I brought in a designer, which is when I said I was interviewing Joe Bird
Okay.
back in the day, and did that for a year. I won't bore you with why it didn't work, but started to just bring in customers, and it was like a mini marketing agency. But needed to move on and got a job with this content marketing agency who had offices in Kings Lynn and in London, and so I would be driving from the Midlands over every week to go and work there. And I came on
That's
in.
quite a slog, that.
Oh, it was huge, and I think my eldest daughter, sorry, was gosh, she was only probably 3.
Right.
So, and we got another one on the way, and like it was a slog. I used to be there for 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was, best part of a 3-hour drive to get there.
Yeah.
It was crackers. But they taught me so much about marketing. I was in a sales role, but obviously selling all these different services, I needed to really understand how they worked. And so I was selling everything from PPC through to copywriting, to website design, to videos, all these different services. Um, and there was part of the business that made these films, and I was always like, these are such cool films. Like I want to be involved. I just want to go on a shoot. Just want to be there on a shoot. And so I'd sort of tee these up to I remember I went to Alpina BMW, which I don't know whether you're into cars or not, but it's like
Yeah.
you don't see many Alpina BMWs, but they're like wolves in sheep's clothing. You get
Yeah.
like a 5 Series that's got an insane amount of horsepower, but it just looks like a normal. Anyway, I went to Alpina, and they said, "Yeah, we'll make a film. We've got a new such and such
When
5
would this
Series
have
in."
been?
This would have been probably 7 years ago.
Okay.
Maybe slightly less, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, something like that. And set it up so that the agency made a film about this car. They went up to the Lake District. They got to drive the car. They got to film the car, and I wasn't allowed to be involved. And it,
Oh.
like, a little part of me just broke my heart, because I was just like, I'm setting all these things up, and I'm like, I just really want to be involved in the filming and just see how it works.
Yeah.
And they told great stories, and you could see that the views on these videos were increasing. They'd include these videos in the newsletter. For an insurance company, that's like, you expect to be like, oh, we've got a summer discount, or the 5 reasons you need extra insurance, or like,
Yeah.
just, but they just send out these great newsletters engaging audiences. So they'd have something about VWs, and they'd send it to their VW audience, and so they became massive fans of, like, an insurance company, which is really weird. So that was another kind of like penny drop moment. I was like, we just need to tell better stories about businesses, and all topics,
Mm.
and people will want to follow, or be involved. And so I started to take the idea of telling stories as an account manager,
Yeah.
and it being a really good sales tool, and this thought of wanting to make videos. And I was like, if I kind of put those together, then maybe I can form a business out of those.
What had been your video experience up to that point?
So fairly limited. Uh, I It was just my mountain biking channel. So
Okay.
I'd always, I love mountain biking, and I'd followed a few mountain biking YouTubers, and there'd been a huge jump in the quality, because some people had got GoPros that they chest mounted, but then they
Yeah.
put a stabilizing gimbal on the back of them,
Yeah.
which is like, that thing behind me there is like a larger for a DSLR type gimbal. But
Yeah.
you can get these miniature ones that would hold a GoPro before the stabilization was really good. And I was like, screw it, I'm going to buy one. So I bought one from like China, a Feutech something or other, had a GoPro Hero 7, which is still, an okay camera, but not great stabilization.
Yeah.
Clipped it onto my front and it like stuck out like a foot. But
Like
actually,
RoboCop.
yeah, look, people were like, what the hell's that attached to your chest? But I drove up to, I remember the first video, I drove up to Castleton in the Peak District, put the GoPro on my chest, and I was like, right, I'm just going to record a loop and I'm going to kind of narrate over the top.
Yeah.
And felt really weird talking to camera. And, one of those sort of first two videos, I'd only put 2 or 3 on, and the views just kept going up and up and up and up and up. And the quality wasn't great. The editing was pretty poor. There was no color grading. There was no real thought to it. It was just like, I'm just going to document my journey. And so yeah, that was kind of my video experience. But cameras are amazing. Like, you don't need to be that technically astute to make a film.
Well, it's funny. I mean, so shout out for the Original Cyclist channel, which I will link to below, and is a good watch. And I am one of your subscribers. You may or may not.
That's
You
good
may
to
or may
know.
not know that I do watch them. But to your point about the camera, it's funny because a lot of what you said prior to this conversation has been about story.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the takeaways that I keep getting from every time I think about starting a YouTube channel or really like giving it a proper go. I've got my nice camera and I just bought some microphone. I mean, I've got more microphones. For someone who doesn't put out a lot of video content, you would not believe how many microphones I've got. And I keep seeing it time and time again. It's not about the equipment; it's about the story you're trying to tell.
Yeah.
Or
I'll
the
give you
target market, right?
access. We've made a video course to help people get into video.
Oh, have you? Okay.
I'll sort access out for you.
I'll link to that below as well in case anyone wants to have a look.
Cool. Maybe shall I do a discount code for your audience? Yeah. All right. I'll sort that out for you. But as you say, got to get the call to action in there. And a big part of you'd expect a video course to be all about making videos, like push this button and make sure this focus is da 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 da. I really don't think it's that important. We do touch on those things, but actually your content strategy, your like idea creation, your like how you create a story arc, like way more important than like these things. Phones, they're like 90% of people could just use their phone and make like, as long as the story's good, everything else is
I think even more than 90%. Like, I think it's crazy, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I said to someone recently, most of us have got a 4K camera in our pocket.
Yep.
And you go back 3, 4, 5 years, it's just what we've got in our pockets now is equivalent to what the TV and movie companies had a couple of years ago.
Exactly. And I get really frustrated. So I do a lot of filming with a chap called Nick. And on a lot of shoots now, we're using something called the Black Magic 6K pocket cinema camera. And I just don't care. I don't care. We now have, like, I've got a big car and the boot is full.
Yeah.
And it genuinely, I get really annoyed with that because we spend 10 times longer setting up and getting all the settings perfect. And I'm like, I just want to switch it on and go. Like, I just want to film stuff like really real, and yeah, there is times where those sort of cameras are better. But like, I mean, just even those big expensive cameras, like they don't have autofocus on them, which because they're like, when you're getting up towards like cinema cameras, you like that, you can imagine like
they expect the cameraman
DOPs going spitting at you because you're using autofocus. I'm like, no, it works. Like, it's way better than you, like, because it's got AI built into it. Like, it locks onto your face, whereas you've got to make sure you've got that perfect. So I'm always a big fan of going, just don't overthink the equipment at all. Just film.
Yeah.
Way better.
So I'm trying to think about how we're going to get to human, but let's talk about human now. I am going to go to the questions, but I don't want to not talk about human because obviously it's a big part of what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're interesting to me because A, you've got a video marketing agency, which I think is very, very cool, and B, you've got a YouTube channel, which I also think is very, very cool. Um, and I guess throughout the questions we'll probably talk about both. But do you want to just talk about human quickly? Because I think we've talked about up to how you got there,
Yeah, yeah.
but then I sideswiped the conversation a little
Not at
bit.
all, not at
So
all. Yeah, so kind of on the back of what we were saying, like
yeah,
I saw that there was a huge amount of videos on people's websites, and obviously the video is just a growing thing, right?
yeah,
We like everything, websites, social, it's all video. So I was kind of like, this was 4 years ago. I was like, there's an opportunity to be part of this as well. The timing feels right.
yeah,
Um, but so much of it is either really stiff and corporate
yeah,
because people want to say exactly the right thing in a very controlled manner,
yeah.
or you've got a videographer who is brilliant at making stuff look sexy. Um, I think I remember seeing a Bentley advert that was just beautifully shot, and I'm like,
Boring.
it's just boring. Like once
Yeah.
I've seen the car, I go, oh, that's a nice car. Then I'm like, okay, like what? Why else would I carry on watching this? Like it's just So, and so stuff. What I was seeing was that video agencies talk so much about their equipment,
Yeah.
and their show reels are all very fancy looking, but they lacked a lot of depth. They lacked story. They lacked real connection. And so it was a good way of hiding how bad I was at filming at the beginning as well, because I was like, well, I was a massive fan and still am of people like Casey Neistat,
I was going to
who,
ask you that a minute ago. He was the first person I spoke to when you said all about the camera and the story. I mean, he
oh, so I
epitomizes what
did
you're
his
saying,
I
right?
did his video course
Okay.
about 18 months ago. And it was brilliant, but a real eye opener as well. Like he uses his cameras on auto.
Yeah.
Like he's not like dialing in all these settings and shooting it in raw. He's like, turn it on, film.
Hmm.
And he takes you through that process. But I was like, actually, if we make it look a bit rough and ready, if there is a bit of camera wobble here and there, or if people are like spilling their coffee or tripping over, or you're going to believe that it's
Real.
it's genuine.
Yeah.
Whereas when stuff is really corporate and practiced and scripted, it might be what the CEO wants to see. Internally, it might be like, yes, we've said all the things that are wonderful about our company, but nobody cares. Like,
Let me ask you a question then. So, if I'm a CEO and you're trying to sell in this, by the
yeah,
way, I totally buy and believe and agree with you. I guess it's a two-part question: is how do you communicate that to them because they have this perception in their mind of what they think a corporate video should look like?
yeah,
And the second part is, have you seen a trend in the last 4 or 5 years where people are coming round to your way of thinking more?
yeah, definitely. So, in answer to your second question, yes, I think it's growing. But in answer to your first question, I guess there's two ways. I mean, I've come from a sales background, and I think when somebody is, when you can see their eyes are lit up and they're if I'm in a room and I'm getting really excited about an idea, then people kind of want to get on board with that. But I'd probably use an example. I'd
Like
be like
Casey.
like look at these two videos, and I'd try and find something that was trying to deliver the same message, a corporate
Mm,
version and a non-scripted version. But I'd also try and this comes on to the kind of the idea creation side of things. But I always talk to people about their business and what they're doing at the moment, and just try and ask loads of questions, not in a very formal way, but in a
yeah,
really relaxed way. And 9 times out of 10, somebody will just say something really obscure that I'm like, that's the story, and
yeah,
they're like, what? That's not. I'm like, no, no, no. That what you're talking about there is different to anything else that's out there. Everybody's trying to say the same thing in their business. If they're trying to think of an example, but you see like car manufacturers and house builders and clothing brands all kind of saying the same thing that their
Yeah,
customer
yeah.
wants. But actually, when somebody does something really obscure and talks about things that only they can talk about, that becomes the thing that people want to anchor into. That becomes the interesting story. And so that's why brand stories are I find easy to film, because they usually companies are usually started from like a pain point, and
Yeah,
usually on a very personal level. So I'd be like, okay, well, where's the real reason this company started, and what's the story that we need to uncover?
yeah.
Because what you usually get told is, oh, we do X, Y, and Z, and these are the benefits. And I'm like, yeah, that's the stuff everybody can see and everybody
Yeah,
knows. Like, the thing I want to find out is, what's the, how does your company work? What gets you up in the morning, and what's the quirky thing that goes on in your business? And if you find a CEO that's like, no, 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 we want corporate, we have done stuff like that, but it's never as successful. It always feels a bit
does it
dry.
break your heart a little bit every
It
time you
does.
put one of
It
those out?
does. And actually, we did some filming for an agency. You'll probably know who it is, but I'll tell you afterwards. And we had to do 4 videos for them,
Right.
all about their agency. And I said, look, I want it non-scripted. I want to just get the best out of your staff.
Yeah,
We'll have an idea of what we want to talk about, and we'll pull on personalities, and I'll get them loose in front of camera, and we'll sort it all out in the edit afterwards.
yeah.
But there was like one video that they really wanted scripted. Of course, the feedback comes back. They're like, "Yeah, we really don't like the scripted one." I was like, "Why is that?" They're like, "It was
Sounds good.
beautifully shot, and it's really, but it just sounds scripted." I'm like, "It's because it is. It's because it is scripted." And this was my point. They're like, "Oh, we love the other one because that's like really fun, and we get to see who." I'm like, "There you go." So
Do you know what? I was before you went told that story. I was just going to ask: have you ever had pushback on your style, but then they've seen the finished result and actually glad they did it? And I
No, I
guess that's
think
a
when
good
you get to the
example.
point of somebody committing to spend money with you, they're on board
Yeah,
already. Um, I don't think they always fully understand the process. I've had, like, early days. I've had customers. My first kind of big customer. Um, we were filming on a housing development up in Scotland, and the sales and marketing director was like, "Are you filming?" And I was like, so that was a really good signal to me. It was almost like, oh, they're so unaware of
yeah,
what's going on, but I was following them around with the camera, and I was like, well, I am, but just some bits. So you just carry on. And actually, it was a really lovely, natural conversation that I was like a fly on the wall.
yeah.
And then when they watched it back, they were like, oh, that's really good. And it ended up being a video that they used as, like, it recruited loads of people for them, because they were like, oh, that sales and marketing director looks like a really nice person to work for.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, there you go. It's because they
Pe-
they see
People love
real
behind the
people.
scenes, don't they?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's way more interesting than your sort of corporate BS that you want to peddle to people. um, so yeah, I always try and convince people that that's the route to go down. It also makes filming a lot easier for
Yeah.
them and for us. Well, maybe not for us all the time, because we've got to be ready to go to capture those moments. But it makes, like, people do not like being in front of camera. They
No.
just don't like. I don't like really being in front of camera. I find it hard, and so if I'm doing it every day and I understand the process, like, to get like an accountant to talk in front of a camera,
Well,
like, it's a big
it's a bit
job.
like when we started this, and one tip I'd got from starting a podcast, a video podcast, is don't say to your guest, right now I'm going to hit record and then we'll start, because it immediately puts that guest under a bit of pressure. Like,
Yep.
so like I did with you, and I've done with every guest, is I hit record like 3 or 4 minutes before we start actually doing it properly,
Yep.
because the hope is, and I guess the same for you, the hope is that you've forgotten you're being recorded and it's just a conversation.
It's exactly that, and I do the same thing. So certainly when we're doing like sit down interviewee stuff, and people are nervous,
Yeah,
we actually hit record before they even come in the room. So we'll get the camera all focused and ready, lighting up, and I'll be like, "Oh, cool, just sit over there while Nick's sorting stuff out," and I'll just
yeah,
start chatting to them. And it almost means they can't change their personality then,
yeah,
because there's no break. of hitting start. I'm like, oh, cool. So,
Yeah.
and then they're like, you recording? Like, yeah. So it's a good technique for
I
sure.
think just to sort of finish up on the whole Casey thing. I don't know if you've heard it. You might have done if you're a fan, but he did a podcast recently with Andrew Schultz,
Oh, I don't think I've heard that one.
and in it he gets asked about the CNN deal he did, and I'm totally paraphrasing it, and I'll get it wrong, but they were trying to recruit him to come in and work for them, or maybe it was another network. I can't remember, but he basically said, "Why would I do that? I'm getting more video. I'm getting more views on my videos every day than," and he reeled off like 3 or 4 networks combined a week or something like that. And it just backs up your point
Yeah.
100%, right? It's not about the camera. It's not about I mean, his editing is very good, but
I mean, he's just been a huge inspiration. I kind of religiously watched his, like, every
same.
lunch break. I'd be like, cool, right, getting on a Casey vlog.
Even
And
now, James, when the notification bell comes up, like Casey's released, because he
I'm
does
like,
it like
yes,
once every month or 2 months
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah,
days. It's like, oh my god, sweet, just drop everything. It's like, right, next 10 minutes, I'm watching that.
yeah. He's an absolute, you know. And as I say, that course I did, which took a few weeks, and you had to, you made 2 films during that course as well. One of them was like zero planning,
Yeah.
just you've just got to run and
I think I
gun with the.
remember that. Did you do a video on YouTube about doing the course? Do I remember seeing that?
I might have talked about it on
I'm sure you did.
somewhere. I basically did 2 videos. One of them was like, have a rough idea, pick up a camera and go
Yeah.
and film it.
Yeah.
And the other one was a more considered story that you wanted to
It
wanted
did.
to
I tell you
tell.
what it was. You cycled from your house into the middle of Birmingham along the canals.
Yeah, so that was the run and gun one. That was
Yeah.
like, I've got an idea, like it's like 10 or 11 miles into Birmingham. I can do it all on the canals. I was like, I'm going to try and find some stuff along the way. And
Yeah.
I called it In Search of Interesting. It didn't perform that well, but it was a good exercise.
Yeah.
And then the more considered one was a story about training my dog, who is snoring in the background, if you can hear.
No.
Um, uh, which is about training her to run behind the bike when I'm in the
Oh,
woods,
yeah, I do remember that one actually.
called Trail Dog. And that, with it being a bit more considered, that's performed really, really well on the channel. I'd love to do more of that kind of stuff, because it's hard work to film it, but it's the end result is like a really lovely film that I'll look back on, and when I'm sat in an old people's home, remembering when I was rad.
Wow, do you know what? It's funny you say that. That's something I think about when it comes to Casey's videos. And he said it in the podcast as well the other day. He said however much hard work it was doing these daily vlogs for 800 odd days in a row, he's got his life documented.
Yeah.
Every little thing he's done. It's just he can just drop in, and there's a little
That's
bit of me
why
that's really jealous of that.
that's genuinely the reason for starting the Original Cyclists channel. Was I just wanted to experiment,
Hmm.
to see whether I could build a channel. Um, but ultimately, like, algorithms are going to change, platforms will become less popular. Like,
Yeah,
I'll have YouTube in 10, 15 years might not be a thing anymore, who knows? But I'll have those videos that I've had great memories from,
yeah,
of riding with mates generally. Whether that's bike packing up to the Peak Districts and like having a giggle on the way, or doing a big epic ride in the lakes, or like, there'll be things I'll be able to look back on, and when I can't do that when I'm old, and just
yeah.
be like, oh, that was great fun, kind of thing. So
Those were the days. You
yeah,
let's talk about ideation and brainstorming. So you covered a bit. I don't know if you covered all you want to say on the topic, because you said about for how you go into clients and whatever. I don't know if you want to take this down the YouTube route, how you do that. But what's your for people who want to create content and make films and stuff? What should they be thinking about from a brainstorming ideation process?
well, there's a couple of things. I mean, if you're wanting to build, there's either building a channel for yourself,
Yeah.
or there is creating video work for other people. The
Do they conflict you?
No, I keep them quite separate. I mean, the principles of building out content pillars are the same. But sometimes a client just comes to you and goes, "We need a video for X,"
Yeah.
and that's what we call our spark. So we'll
Mhm.
go, "Oh, okay, so you want that, and here's your idea. It's like a slightly rubbish idea. What if you were to do it like this?" And we then will use our experience to try and guide them into making something that's going to be better on social, or better, on their websites, or wherever the video is designed for.
Yeah.
So client work is very much starts with a spark, and then we understand where it's going to be hosted, who it's for, like what's the goal of that video,
Yeah.
and we really start to dig. When you're left with a blank sheet of paper and you're trying to create content for yourself or for a client, it's just actually we need some stuff for social because we've got to turn up on social.
Yeah.
That's a lot harder. And if ever you've tried to sort of sit down and just come up with ideas, that's a like you can't do it in between 11 and 12 on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm gonna come up with ideas for my YouTube channel. It just doesn't happen. And so I use a couple of things. One will be the people that I follow on social. So like Casey's vlogs will have inspired some sort of thought along the way.
Yeah.
But I tend to look out for parts of videos that have like interested me and make a note of them.
Yeah.
So it might be an opening, like how a video is opened, or an element within there that I really like, and I almost create a bank of those just in note form. Um, and when it comes to things like cycling ideas, the reason I haven't uploaded for like 4 or 5 months, apart from being really busy, is that bank of ideas that I was working on just dried up, and I need to spend some time, you know, coming up with new ideas again. So I use, you might be in the shower and go, huh, I could do. It's like I've got an app on my phone called Notion, or
Yes.
even just notes on your phone. Like I just start logging them in there, and sometimes you come back to them and you're like, no, actually that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
But then ideas don't come to you in an organized way, and so just having a system to just log ideas, so
Yeah.
that when you go, okay, now I need to go and film a video, you can just look at that bank of ideas and be like, cool, that's the one that's jumping out at me today.
Well,
I'll
you're
go
not starting from a point of zero, are you? That's the
exactly.
key. Yeah.
And that's where, like, people are talking about the use of chat GPT, which I don't use. I know we've used it a bit in the Marketing Meetup, um, but it can be a great way. Give me 10 ideas for mountain biking videos, and
Yeah.
then probably like nine of them will be rubbish, and one will be like, eh. But it might just give you that idea to get you going. And as you say, the point of zero is the hardest
Yeah.
thing. But sometimes I'll just, if it's my cycling channel, it might be that we're just riding somewhere new and I don't have a plan. I'll just clip it on and just try and make a story as we go. Other times, like when I did the trail dog video, that I had to think about the shots, like
Yeah.
where, and then create a shot list. But yeah, having an understanding of what your audience wants to see, or like what you want to be known for, and
Yeah.
building ideas around that is really important. um, it makes life a lot easier. If you're writing on LinkedIn, I talk about creativity, I talk
Yeah.
about video, I talk about community, and I talk about being human. And
Yeah.
so all of my ideas usually link back to one of those four kind of content pillars. um, so once you've got those pillars, it makes life a lot easier to kind of.
Does the same hold true for your YouTube channel? And what I mean by that is, are you looking at it from, or how are you looking at it, I guess is the question, right? Is it from what you think the audience wants to see, or have you got in mind who the audience are, and then you're creating for them, or is it just, you know what, this is what I would like to create?
More so the latter,
Okay.
if I'm honest. So there was a little bit of a plan behind it, where originally what I wanted to do is ride as many trail centres in the UK, and maybe in the world, uh, and document them. So I live near Cannock Chase, and they have a trail there called Follow the Dog, and like
Okay.
millions of people ride it every year. But the videos online were either just a video of it, so nobody talking, but just the entire trail, like 2 hours of like god awful footage. Um, so I was like, actually, maybe I could make a personal video about which bits I like,
Yeah.
and because I know the trails quite well. Um, and so I then just started, because I travel a lot for work anyway. I would take my bike with me and film the trail centres whilst I was out filming as well. And so I've built up. If you were to go through all the videos, there's loads of trail centre reviews in there. So that works really well from a search perspective. So
Yeah.
YouTube is like one of the biggest search engines. And so if you're going to go to the Lake District and you're going to ride at Windlatter, then you're going to write Windlatter mountain biking,
Yeah.
and then, I mean, my Windlatter videos are really old now, but like I was ranking number one for Cannock Chase. I ranked in the top one or two for Windlatter, and so I was strategically picking these trail centres, and that's kind of how the channel grew. And then I just started filming other things, like I did a bike event called the Dirty Reaver, which I did a couple of weeks ago again.
That
The
looked really
first
good fun, by the way.
Yeah, it was nuts. The first time it was wet, but the 2 years before, I think I ranked number one for Dirty Reaver as well. It's the UK's biggest gravel event.
Yeah.
Again, just took a GoPro, nothing fancy, just effectively vlogged the journey. So there is a little bit of thinking. I do tend to, if I've got a choice, I'll ride somewhere that I think people are going to want to go.
Have you been down to Gloucestershire, Forest of Dean?
I have. I did an enduro down in the Forest of Dean,
Oh, did you?
but I didn't have my camera with me at the time. I think the weather conditions were atrocious as well. But yeah, that's somewhere, like, that's on the list of
Well, I
places
get
I'd like
in the
to.
summer. I come down. I'll take you to 417, which is a downhill
Done.
map. It's
Yeah, I've
unbelievably
heard about
cool.
that.
And they got
Definitely.
one in the Forest of Dean. Maybe we'll do a 2-dayer.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
So just on YouTube again. So do you have a goal with it? Do you have a strategy with it? Strategy, maybe wrong word. I don't know. But do you want it to become a full-time earner? And the reason I ask that is because I had, I had a comment on one of my posts the other day, and this young lady said something along the lines of, "Oh, I have YouTube as my hobby. I'm not worried about growth. I'm not worried
Mm.
about views. I just enjoy making films and editing."
Yeah.
And so many people are, you got to do this to grow your channel. You got to do this to get your revenue and monetization and blah 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 blah. And I'm not saying
Yeah.
there's anything right or wrong with that, but do you have a view on that?
So uh, with my business head on, it's never going to be the thing that's going to provide the income that I want. As talking very
Could it
selfishly,
be?
I would have to be incredibly committed to it.
Right.
I'd need to be uploading a couple of times a week, and if you just think logistically, riding, like, I'd have to live somewhere really interesting and have a bunch of different trails, and
Yeah.
and then would it suck the joy out of the thing that I love, which
Yeah,
is
maybe.
which is mountain biking? Like, I rode last night and didn't feel the need to take a camera. If this was my main income, I would have had to have filmed it. And so I'm like, I don't see it being the thing that I want my career to hang on. Plus,
Right.
I'm 42. Like, does anybody want, you know, weekly videos
Doing
from a
backflips.
55-year-old? I'm just not going to be that interesting.
I don't know,
Um,
man. I mean, there
maybe
will
maybe
be
they
other
will. I don't know.
55-year-olds doing it.
True. But no, I don't think it would be um, something that I want to make my main income from. There's two other reasons I want it to grow. One is it's a great kind of way I can experiment, so I
Yeah.
can make mistakes on that channel, and I make loads, but it helps me learn about the the platform not on a client's terms. So I can grow my own channel and use that experience to help other brands.
Okay.
Um, that's kind of important, but then also, like, it's something interesting to talk about. So, you know, if at some point a bike related brand came along and were like, "Oh, hey, we'd like to do a such and such, we'd like you to bike pack across Norway, and use our bike doing it. I'll be like, hell yeah. And we're going to pay £20. I'm going to be like, probably, I'd probably take that. I remember the first time I got paid, it was the house builder I was talking about up in Scotland. They wanted
Yep.
they'd built a development at the end of the Great Glen Way, and they were like, oh, could you make a
I've
cycling
seen that one. You
video?
cycle to it.
The funny thing
Sound
is,
like a stalker now.
I didn't
Yeah.
actually ride that because it was so long and I had to self-film it. I basically rode sections of it, then drove a little bit further up, and then rode.
Okay.
Oh, it was a nightmare to film, but I got paid to ride my bike, and I was like, yes, I've actually won. So
And
it creates opportunities more than anything else.
have you done anything to put your, I guess, human and original cyclists in front of mountain bike brands?
No, I've had lots, conversations with, a number, but my channel just isn't that big, and so I think until
But that doesn't matter necessarily, right? If
it,
you're
it
just
doesn't,
proving
but they
what you
don't
can do.
understand. Like, I'm like, I have the highest ranking video for like all these, like the ideas are great. That if you look at the view count versus the followers,
Yeah.
I think my Can It Chase video hit like 30,000 views, and I'd got about 300 subscribers.
Yeah.
I was like, the video, it almost doesn't matter
Well,
on
that's the
the,
way YouTube seems to be changing, from what I can gather.
yeah. Um, but maybe if that channel gets bigger and I get to X amount of thousands, then it will naturally just be easier conversations.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll happen in time. There's plenty of like cycling brands that follow me on LinkedIn as well. So I'm always like in the back of my mind, like, oh, just keep chipping away on the cycling thing. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter because I know the cycling industry isn't exactly a hugely lucrative one.
Yeah.
I just
Well,
I just want
you say that, but I went to 417 for um a kind of, I call it a race, right? It's for amateurs. I'm not a professional, and I came last in my heat. We won't talk about that. But what I did notice, there must have been, I don't know, 100, people there,
yeah
and every one of them was head to toe in Troy Lee designs, in Fox, in all these other big brands, and every bike there was, on 95% of bikes there, looked like they were like 5K each.
yeah.
There was some serious
It's
hardware.
absurdly expensive. I'm in the process of buying a new mountain bike, and it just pains me how expensive they are.
Yeah.
It's crackers, absolutely crackers. But yeah,
We
so
won't,
yeah, some people are doing all right in there for sure. But,
we won't
but
talk about that just in case your wife's watching. We'll move on to the next question.
yeah.
You mentioned Notion a little while ago as one of the tools you use.
Yeah.
I'm also a big Notion fan. Are there, for any other sort of aspiring filmmakers, are there any other sort of systems, processes they should be thinking about? Is there anything, you also mentioned a guy you work with, is bringing other people into the fold important?
Yeah, definitely. That's moved on. Uh, so in terms of other people, yes, I had Emily, who was head of social media for Superdry, like used to work with me on a few clients where she'd be doing all the sort of scheduling and all that kind of thing on the social channels. I'm learning from her. Nick, who I do most of my filming with, he's got a film background.
Okay.
He also uh, is a producer on a channel with like 3 million subscribers.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
so he understands YouTube really well. Technically, he's a better filmer than I am. And so, I'm learning from him.
Did you start solo?
So he's a producer on a very niche
No, no, no.
channel.
When you started
Oh,
Human, were you on your own?
yeah, completely on
Oh,
my own.
okay.
I think like one of the first jobs I got in was like a website, so I'd like subbed it out because I have no idea how to build websites. But yeah, so I tend to try and lean into the things I'm better at and the things
Yeah.
I enjoy, and then when projects get bigger and harder, then I will bring in people to make sure that I deliver on those.
Okay.
But most of my shoots now, there's at least one other on, to sort of make sure things are good, and then I sub a lot of the editing out now as well, because it takes so long. I can't do it all. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, in terms of like you know tools and that sort of thing and apps, we use the Adobe suite. So I'm on Premiere. Nick, who I film with, has just gone over to DaVinci Resolve, which you can use for free.
Yeah.
So he's learning that. I might move over. I'm kind of
DaVinci Resolve seems to be getting a lot of positive press
yeah,
at the moment.
yeah. It's very different, but it's like kind of makes sense really. The problem
Yeah.
is I've learned over the years all the shortcuts and everything in Premiere. It's be a bit of a wrench to go over to something new, but yeah, I was, there's really interesting things. Like I'm terrible at accounts and like logging my expenses and my mileage and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And when I first started the business, my accountant was advised me to use TripCatcher, and at the time it was called Receipt Bank. It's called Dext now. So every time I travel anywhere, my phone logs where I'm traveling.
Oh,
It then
really?
automatically ties into Zero, which is my accounting software,
Yeah.
and puts it through as an expense at the right pence per mile. And all you've got to do is press start and stop and put the reason for the trip in. So I never have to log any. I don't have to go back and work it all out.
Yeah.
It's all tracked on my phone. And then every time I stop at Starbucks or whatever on the motorway services, I take a photo of the receipt, and the Dext reads the receipt, pulls out all the VAT, and again sends it off to your accounting software.
Wowzers. Do you know what, James? That is why I love this podcast, because most people would say, "Oh, I use DaVinci and this is why," which is great, but doesn't really help people, right? Because most people know. But it's when you drop nuggets like that, which is really powerful,
It's
because
such a
they're
time
game
saver.
changing.
Yeah, it's a massive time saver, and because it's the stuff that I don't enjoy. Like that's
Yeah,
where you should be looking to use tools. You know,
yeah.
yes, there's things that the software that we all use helps us, but actually that's a massive one for me. It's just because it would never get done, or it would get done, but it would then it would
It's
be
that one
like,
where you get to the end of the month and you're looking back through your calendar. You're like, right, I've driven here, and then you're on Google Maps, and then it's like,
yeah,
oh well, I've got to
you
calculate
spend
that.
half a day,
Yeah, yeah.
or
Oh,
you
easily.
end up with a shopping bag full of receipts, just going, oh god, when was this? Just awful, absolutely awful. And now, so I send my invoices out once a month. I just do it all on the same day,
Yeah.
and I then, so I mean, if you're thinking about systems and processes, like James Clear's Atomic Habits, which, having a look at the bookshelf behind you, I bet you that's on there somewhere. Um,
Do you know what? It's not, 'cause it's upstairs. I actually lent that to my wife very recently.
so just
Yes.
a brilliant book in terms of you know getting things into your routine, um, as opposed to sort of you know
Making it hard.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I write a monthly email newsletter for Human. I've done it every single month since I've started the business.
Yeah.
I don't try and do it every week. I don't put the pressure on myself, but I do say within the first week of every single month, I will send out a newsletter, and I've done it because it's almost like built into my okay. Looking at the calendar,
Yeah.
being human has got to go out, and just having things that are part of your routine makes life a lot easier, I think. Um, which
Becomes
is
routine, doesn't it? Like the James Clear example is about brushing your teeth, for example. You don't think, oh, I've got to brush my teeth. So you just do it.
yeah. So every
Yeah.
time I get in the car, I like to drive for work. I track it on my phone. Every time I like buy a coffee, my phone comes out. I take a photo of it. It's like, what habit can you form that's just going to save time
Yeah.
in like doing the boring stuff?
And remind me
Um,
the two names again.
so Trip Catcher
Okay.
and Dext, which is Dext, I think it's
Okay.
dext.cc or something, and they
I'll
all link.
find. I'll link it in the show notes so people
Yeah,
can
and that
check it
links
out.
to Zero directly. So
Yeah,
Zero is my accounting software, which is a bit like QuickBooks.
I use Zero as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I don't know how much my accountant charges me for it, but I think it's only like a couple of quid a month, which
Yeah,
I would.
it's pretty cheap depending on what level you want to get to or number of stuff you do. But
Yeah, no, the
the base
apps.
package is really good.
Yeah, the trip catcher and Dext, I think you have to pay for. I think that's the thing that's a couple of quid a month, but
But
I don't. It could be 50 quid. I don't know. This is my
well,
point.
that's the point, right? What it saves you in time and stress, and
Yeah,
m- think how many. You only got to have one road trip that you don't calculate the mileage for,
yeah,
and that would negate the cost, right?
yeah. Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of apps that I use, like when I'm flying the drone. I have like drone assist and that. It's all just stuff that's you know is not important. It's those little things that I'm like, right, what's going to make my life easier?
yeah.
That's the thing I've got my eye on.
But just I was going to go to the next one. Where did the name human come from?
I wrote down a bunch. I've got a book somewhere with all like different names in there. I wanted something that, having sort of come up with a lot of brands in the old business that I worked in, they'd always come up with these like really stupid names that nobody could understand over the phone, and you'd be like, I mean, this is going back to when people used to ring each other, but
Yeah,
I wanted something that was easy to say, easy to remember, and human to me is at the core of the stories that we're trying to tell. We're trying to tell human stories.
right.
Uh, the old saying, "People buy from people."
Yeah,
It's all about people. It's not about the companies in my eyes. And I think if you make it more about the people than the companies, then it's far more interesting. And so human
okay.
just felt like a good fit. It also meant that if video didn't work out, I could segue very easily into
HR
copywriting
company.
or PPC or something. I don't know. Like, it doesn't really mean anything in that.
Yeah,
It means everything and nothing in that sense.
fair enough. On the subject of human, what 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 are your goals with it? What do you want to achieve? Do
I
you have a
think
goal?
I struggle a little bit with goals
Okay.
because it's not a business that anybody that runs a video agency will know that it's not easily scalable. So I've got it to the point where it creates a really good income for me. I've got regular customers. We've got a good reputation. Um, but if I wanted to double the size of the business, if we're
Yeah,
talking just financials, that means more equipment, more travel, more customers to deal with, more crew on shit. Like it's just more of everything.
yeah,
And I think sometimes we can be drawn into a trap of just trying to make stuff bigger for the sake of it, for our egos.
yes.
Whereas actually, I don't feel the need to do that.
Okay.
Um, what I'm more interested in is time,
Yeah,
is making the business work from a perspective where I've got two young children. I want to make sure I spend plenty of time with them. I want to ride my bike lots. I want to go
yeah,
on holiday. Like, can I go on the holidays and live in the house and spend the time with my family and do the fun things that I want to do? Will human allow me to do that?
yeah.
If the answer is yes, then that's absolutely my goal. Can I do more of those things? Then I guess that would be a goal. But you know, I I, I think just to make it bigger and more profitable for the sake of it isn't going to necessarily bring me any more joy.
Has that always
Um,
been your thought process?
I mean, I've always, I've been financially driven, and
Yeah.
I don't hide that. I don't, people are like, oh no, it's all about the process. I'm like, well, no, you'd like a
You got to
fancy
pay the
car
bills.
and
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you don't want to pay the. I want to go to like Costa Rica. I don't want to have to go to Bognor Regis.
yeah.
Like I'd like to. I want to live a full life, but uh, it doesn't consume me
No.
it's got to be all about the money. And then of course
And
I've got the marketing meetup as well, which I've got to keep. I want to spend more time in, but I kind of want to do both.
yeah,
I've got a poster on my wall that says you can have your cake and eat it too. Like like people are always, oh no, well, you can't do both. You've got to do one thing well, and I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. Human would be a lot bigger if I wasn't doing the marketing meetup, and I'm sure I could make the marketing meetup, accelerate quicker if I wasn't doing human. But I kind of want to do both, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Like, it's just that things happen slower in that sense. So I'm more,
Things happen differently, right? Not, I wouldn't necessarily, I mean, slower might be the word, but they do happen. I'm like you. I think when I was younger, I wanted to be a multi-millionaire. I wanted to have an empire and I wanted to have a unicorn and I wanted to like, but actually, as you sort of, that's why I asked, has it always been your thought process? Because as I've got older, I've kind of come to the conclusion that there's a certain financial level I'm pretty happy with because I know that this is covered here and this is covered there. I can
yeah.
do this, this, and this. And actually, getting from that level to multi millionaire, to be totally frank, is far more hard work than I'm really happy to put in or want to
I've
put in.
I've met a lot of very successful people over the years. We quite often deal with founders throughout my career. Been mixing with some really interesting high net worth individuals.
Yeah,
They're rarely the ones that are just beaming from ear to ear or like just having the time of their life.
yeah,
There's some business owners that I work with that have got that balance. Like, they have stressful times, but then they're off like having a lot of fun as well, and like they've got a really good balance. They're the ones that I'm like, right, how are you doing that?
yeah,
Because you've got a good sized business and you're clearly making good profits, but you seem okay. Like,
yeah.
you seem to have your ducks in a row.
But it's also doing the things you want to do, isn't it? Whether that's
Exactly.
human, marketing meetup, riding your bike. You know, I've got a young family as well, and it's the same thing. I'm like, I look back to, I don't know, 5+ years ago when I was working in London and I was commuting in every day. This is before my daughters were born. I just, if I was still doing that now, I just don't know when I'd ever see them.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
literally that black and white. Like I'd be going out before they get up and I'd be getting home. Um, I don't know. Maybe some people like that. I just don't know.
I
It's
think Joe's really good at this, like really, really good. And for those that listen that don't know Joe, so Joe's my business partner in the Marketing Meetup. So that business is growing way quicker than human.
yeah.
Like, it's just the
Oh, well, I see
trajectory is
the
like,
emails. It's like, oh, it used to be there was a obviously pre-lockdown, but there was a marketing meetup in London once every couple of months, and now, I mean, as I said to you before, I live in Gloucestershire. I couldn't really get to London, but now there's one in Exeter, there's one in Bristol, there's one in Birmingham, there's one in. I saw New Zealand, I think, popped up, and like
yeah,
every
yeah.
time I seem to get an email from you guys, there's 10 new locations that I've
It's
never seen
nuts,
before.
and but like Joe's really like, he's not massively financially driven, which is great.
Yeah,
He's not stupid. Like, we're still trying to make money from it, and it's working. Uh, but like, he takes Mondays off because he's got a young daughter.
yeah,
Like, he wants to spend time seeing her grow up. I'm like, good on you. Like, and sometimes that's really annoying because I'm like, I need to speak to Joe. Like, there's stuff to be done. But then I give my head a wobble, and I'm like, no, he's like, that's good.
yeah,
And I like, today, my wife now works on a Wednesday. I have to both take and pick up my youngest daughter from primary school.
right,
And initially I was like, oh, it's like getting in the way of like work. And then I'm like,
yeah.
oh no, hang on. It's not I have to do this. It's I
Get
get
to
to
right,
do
yeah.
this. And so,
I've
there's,
had exactly the same thoughts as you, James. Every now and again, it'd be like, oh, I want to do. I haven't got time,
yeah,
and yeah, I do the same thing. I give my head a wobble and like, perspective,
it's
man.
great. And so this
Yeah,
morning I'm like, singing songs, going through the nature reserve, the dog's running around, we're having a giggle. Like, I'm like, this is what life's all about. Like,
yeah.
this is the important stuff. And so I'm careful with goals. I'm really careful because they have
But that's a
to.
goal in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it is.
Yeah,
But I think people look at, it's when you see like agencies. I've always got my eye on agencies, and they're like, oh, we've now got 25 staff in our video agency, and I'm like, oh god,
yeah,
that would terrify me.
And
Like, you need
I,
a
I can't
proper good flow of video work to make that
I
work.
can't remember if you said the phrase pre or post we started recording, but you said something about working on your business as opposed to in your business.
Mm,
And that's kind of what that is, right? Because you start off where you are now. And then when you get to that level, if you've got 10, 15, 20 people working for you, you're no longer doing that stuff that you enjoy doing.
yeah,
You're basically firefighting every day, right? And you're managing this person, this person. And there's nothing to say there's anything wrong with that at all. But it changes the dynamic of what
absolutely.
maybe you want to do.
I don't want to be a director of a huge video agency that does no filming. Like,
Yeah.
if human, like, I don't know, if in 10 years time humans still making videos, like, that's cool. But if it's not, if it's doing something else, that's cool as well.
Yeah.
Like, I used to think that you'd have to, you'd have to stick to this path and do the hard work, and I think the beauty of like an interesting career is you meander as you go
Yeah.
and you pick up experience. I worked in removals. Like, my God. In fact, my first job was as a pensions analyst for a year. I know nothing about pensions.
Is that as exciting as it sounds?
Oh, it was awful. But actually, there's something that I can pull from that.
Yeah.
There'll be some experience, and you just, I think if you just go, right, I'm 10 years and it's going to be this company, and I'm going to be a millionaire, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. Like, for some people that's great, but I'd much rather sort of float on the wind a little bit, and
Yeah.
and just see where the world takes me. Because then you're open to opportunities, right? Something comes
Yeah.
along, and you go, actually, that thing there, which is why we were looking at the course. Like, maybe teaching people about filming could be an interesting thing, and then they go off and do even better videos than us. Then great, if we can help
Yeah.
do that. So I'm open minded with goals. I think getting my processes better and my sort of routine better would be a goal in itself.
Yeah.
Making sure I'm building in fitness into my working week a lot better. Like, Tuesday night is riding night, but like, it's not. What else can I be doing?
Yeah.
So just a holistic view of life, and having like a better balance would be a goal in itself.
It is. I do the same thing. I mean, like you, I've got two young kids. I got my own business. It's the same process. I'm like, all right, every sort of couple of weeks, it'd be like, right, diet changes this week. The new health regime
Yeah,
kicks in
yeah,
this
yeah,
week, and then it gets to Friday. It's like, oh, I didn't quite manage, but it's tough, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. So the next question is about audience engagement
Yeah,
and how you do it. And I guess it's probably a bit of a interesting question for you because I suppose you look at it from different angles. We could throw the marketing meetup in as well if you like. Um, but I guess the audience on your cycling channel would be different to the marketing meetup, would be different to human. And actually,
yeah,
human, maybe the audience might be your clients, but it also might be the audience of those clients.
yeah, yeah.
I'm interested to know what you sort of think about it, take away from it, how much you focus on audience engagement.
Yeah. So human audience isn't particularly big. I'm not particularly prolific in creating content for human. It's the cobbler's son. We
Yeah,
don't actually create much content for ourselves, which is a shame. But I'm fine with it. The marketing meetup, we very much engage. It's a really positive community.
do you know, I was just going to interrupt you there and say I see many communities online. I said the same thing to Joe actually, and I see many communities online that start and grow and self-destruct. You will
Yeah,
see it 99 times out of 100, right? It always self-destructs, and that might be the ethos changes, or it might be people just stop posting. And I said the same thing to Joe. Just say to you, it stuns me how to this day I don't go on Facebook much, admittedly, but every now and again I'll go on there, and there's always people posting about it. Same on LinkedIn, and
yeah.
that is, I mean, kudos to you both for that because that is staggeringly impressive.
But I think it's not like we say this all the time. It's not about us. Like, and I think if you have that mindset of it's not about you,
Yeah,
then that's how you create community. if you like, people confuse followers and audience with
Yeah.
community. We're creating community because there's conversations going on that are completely independent to anything Joe and I even know about. The communities that are run in all those locations you mentioned, we don't really have that much involvement. We give them the guidelines, but it's down to them to. We give them the values. That's the thing. That's the important thing. And positively lovely
And
is
maybe
the
that's the key, right? Because
yeah
there are plenty, like I say again, like there's plenty of communities out there that start off with the right intentions, but just don't seem to last.
yeah exactly. But I think that our whole goal with this is to leave a bit of an impact and a bit of a legacy for the marketing community so that they can all just keep helping each other and that
Yeah.
Joe and I become less and less important so that one day maybe we aren't even part of it and it's self-sustaining in that sense. that's
Mm.
that's far cooler, right? Where you've got
Oh yeah.
loads of people helping each other and it's just we've I talk about the spark of an idea, like we've just been the spark for the community. um and I think that's a good way of looking at it. Like as I said, there's communities and there's audiences. Your question was around audience.
Yeah.
um we're not brilliant on social, but like if people are engaging with us, certainly on LinkedIn we're fairly on it.
Yeah.
um if I post on LinkedIn and somebody comments, I pretty much always reply to those comments. I'm trying to build rapport and conversation, and that's what social media is all about. It's social, right? So
Yeah.
like you need to. I don't use it as a broadcasting platform, so you won't hear me talking. Oh, I've done this video this week for this company. Like you'll very rarely see any of my work on LinkedIn, because people don't care. Like they'd rather have a conversation around mental health or around the commuting, or I don't know, like all the things that are tangential to your actual
So
core
how
sort of
do you
business.
fit that into your four pillars then that you mentioned earlier?
So I lean very much into the sort of behind the scenes kind of human side.
Yeah.
So I talk about humanity in business a lot. So the post that I put out this morning was like more of a mental health type one.
Yeah.
I'd had a real like bit of a rubbish day yesterday, and I was in a right fog. And then I had the little Tuesday night WhatsApp group going, "Who's
Yeah.
going riding?" It'd been raining all day. I'm like, "Oh, I'm not going out. It's gonna be awful." And then it was like, "Oh yeah, I'll go out. I'll go out. I'll go out." And I was like, "Oh, I suppose I better go out." Grumble, grumble, grumble.
And you're
Got up
glad you
to
did.
got up to the chase, absolutely soaking wet because the trails were washed out. Um, but with every pedal stroke, I'm like, I could just feel my mood lifting, and that
Yeah.
becomes something that's quite relatable. It's something that's maybe useful if somebody's having a bit of a bad day, and they're
Hmm.
like, "Oh, I'm in a fog." Well, go out for a walk. Like,
Yeah.
go and like it's sunny outside, and a bit of fresh air can really help change perspective. So, we try very much to think about what would be interesting or useful for the audience.
Yeah.
I'd try and either give a tip on filming, or it would be a behind the scenes bit of content like an Instagram story as to what we're actually up to, which people find interesting. um, but then the cycling channel is a little bit different. It's usually just questions around the trails and where I'm riding, and how long things take, or what equipment I'm using, or that kind of thing. And I just reply to those. There's the odd troll occasionally, which I always find quite funny. Um,
What does a troll say about you filming a mountain bike trail?
well, I know, just like yeah, or there'll just be like some anti-cyclist
Oh
person,
right.
or
Okay.
just I don't know, somebody just saying that my videos are fake and they're sped up, and I'm like, well, they're not, but like
So
I'm not
what?
going to sit here and argue. It's like arguing with a pigeon, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
uh, what's the point? So generally I ignore anybody that just wants to get into a fight, and just have a bit of empathy. People are obviously in a bad place if they feel the need to write horrible stuff on
Like
social media
like
posts. I'm
speeding
like,
up your
well,
videos.
maybe they just need a hug.
Yeah.
So quite often I'll just offer them a hug. You're a wanker. Would you like a hug? You need a hug.
Oh,
So yeah, I think it's almost more important than the content itself sometimes. You know,
yeah.
if you think about growing on platforms like LinkedIn, I think if you haven't got ideas for content, just get involved in chatting with people, and you get discovered that way. You know, it's just as important.
When
So
you're producing videos for clients, does the topic of engagement come up? Is that within your remit, or is it something you encourage? Like, so obviously, if they're putting those videos out on YouTube, for example, or LinkedIn, or
yeah,
wherever it might be, you and I both know the benefit of engaging with the audience.
yeah.
Do you ever have that conversation with them to try and highlight that?
I did. I used to. So, but it's really hard when you're working with like a big corporate business and
Yeah,
you've got like a small marketing team that's limited on time or resources. You can get you start to go into a whole nother world of, so we used to offer like video and social media services and copywriting and all these different things, and I've
yeah,
gradually tried to reduce it down to just video, because you end up just spending half your time advising them on how to manage the posts, how to
right,
post them properly, how to deal with comments and trolls. Uh, you know, trying to teach people that, you know, that there's a chap that I do a bit of work for, who I like write some of his LinkedIn posts, and I'm like, you've got to get involved in commenting on people's stuff. Like, I can't do that for you because I'm not
yeah,
you, and I don't know your industry as well as you do. So I was like, just have it like 5 minutes a day of just going onto LinkedIn and commenting on stuff, and you'll naturally grow just by doing that.
yeah,
Um, but it's like leading a horse to water. Like you know, you can't always make people drink, and I found that really frustrating because we'd see some of our videos being posted on social, and then there'd be a load of comments, and they wouldn't reply, and I'd be like,
Well,
guys, like,
that was why I was going to ask, because
yeah, yeah,
sort of playing devil's advocate there. Then, so if you have a banger of a video and you see the comments not getting replied to, you know that if they did engage with that, the video would do better.
yep,
And not only would it do better, but then when they're analyzing its performance, they'll be like, "Oh, James, you know, like obviously we paid you to do this video, and you know, it didn't really do that well, so we're not gonna hire you again." And
yeah.
you're like,
So,
"If you
uh,
just
I
bloody replied, would
yeah,
you
I do
catch
advise people
22
to do it.
situation, right?"
Yeah, but I don't get too hung up on it.
Okay,
Um, so quite often, what we'll do is we'll do a shoot where, uh, you know, things like testimonial videos are really popular.
hmm,
People always want them on their website, but they don't always perform particularly well on LinkedIn.
yeah,
On LinkedIn, on social media, because like nobody cares.
yeah,
But they're an important part of the buying funnel, and so it's a trust signal on the website. So we'll focus on making something, let's say, for the website. But then if that person says something funny and or
stick
like
it in
really
outtakes.
insightful, then we'll clip it up as a vertical edit and give it to them as like, and say, look, you here was the core video, but actually during the day there's these 3 posts that are perfect for social media.
Yeah,
Perhaps you could use the, you know, the description, you know, give them a guidance and then hand it over to them, to use. But because that's not the main reason they've come to us,
yeah.
I don't worry about that too much. I'd
From a bit.
rather, you know,
No, sorry, I was just going to say, from a business perspective, would you give them that free because it's just, you know, like a leftover little bit of content, but
sometimes, well,
also
most of the time,
thinking
yeah,
you could translate that into potentially future business?
exactly. So, uh, again, it's a bit of a, you know, pitching point of difference where, you get a an RFP and they'll be like, "This is the video that we want," and you go,
Yeah,
"Cool, that's the price." And like, then you're just up against every other video agency.
mm,
You know, we've won a piece of work that we're filming in a couple of weeks, where it's going to be like a banner video on a website, and it's all like fly throughs and like interesting stuff. No sound on it, but it'll just be on the website.
right.
And I'm like, well, why don't we make a vlog of the day? Like, we'll have a, you know, another member of crew that's just filming us and you, and
Yeah.
they'll interview you during the day, and we'll make a mini vlog, and then you can talk about how you made that video, why you made that video, and it will just draw more attention to it. The cost, we build that into the package anyway,
Yeah.
but they're getting, like, rather than just one core video, they're getting a core video, a vlog, and maybe some snippets that come out of it.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's a sensible way of using your budget.
Yeah.
So, but what I've, to get social media clients where you're just creating content for social media, I think there's a cap on what you can charge for that.
When you're getting asked to do this stuff, how often does the topic of virality come into it?
Not that often.
Oh, really?
I think it's one of those things that people, that agencies say, oh, we've been asked to make a video go viral. I don't know whether that many people ask for that. I think if you've got a client that's asking for a viral video, that would be a bit of an alarm bell for me
Oh, would
anyway.
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I'm like, you clearly don't understand how social media works.
Yeah.
And then you've got that education process to go through of, like, okay, well, virality isn't a formula.
Yeah.
We had a video, like, probably one of my first proper viral videos, for the Marketing Meetup, that I put on TikTok the other day. I had no idea that it was going to go viral. No idea. I kind of knew it was an okay video, but it depends which way the
What
wind's
was the
blowing.
video?
It was a video of a guy that I filmed in Cambridge talking about, whether a lemon. He showed a picture of a lemon, and he was like, "Is a lemon fast or is it slow?"
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
And we were
I
like,
saw
"Oh,
that.
everyone's, oh, it's fast." It was like, why? Like, it makes no sense. And then showed a
Yeah.
spiky shape and a rounded shape, and he was like, one of these is Kiki and the other one's Booba. Which
Yeah.
one's Kiki and which one's Booba? And they were like, oh, the spiky one's Kiki. Like, what? Like, it doesn't,
I
so
saw that. I can't remember where I saw. I don't think it was TikTok. I think maybe it was LinkedIn or somewhere I saw
yeah,
it.
I think we put the same post onto it, and it did really well on all the platforms.
Yeah.
But it had like a couple of million views on TikTok.
Did it really?
Yeah,
Wowzers.
it did really, really well. And so I think if anybody's coming to you going, we want a viral video, I'd be like, well, I can't make you a viral video. I mean, I can, but I don't know whether it's going to be viral or not.
Yeah.
It's pure, it's chance a lot of the time.
On that subject then, so the red flags of clients.
Yeah.
Have you ever not worked with a client because of, I don't know, requests they've made or?
Yeah, I've got to be really careful with how I. Yes.
If you'd rather move on and I'll snip that out in the edit, then you let me
No,
know.
I mean, so when I set the business up, I was like, it's a no dickheads policy.
Yeah.
Like, I spent years and years and years working with certain customers that I had to work with because they were the business's customers.
Yeah.
And
you had a boss.
and I had a boss, and
Yeah.
I had revenue targets. I have cut reasonable amounts of revenue from human when I could have carried on working with a couple of clients, because I didn't feel we were aligned, should we say.
How easy a decision was that?
It's hard. I've got a family to feed.
Yeah.
But actually, the second I made the decision, it was like, all the stress goes, but also you can then reflect and kind of go, well, I was spending a bunch of time worrying about these people, not enjoying the work, not making much money out of them because they're a nightmare to deal with, and all that's doing is that's freeing up time to go and get an awesome client to work with, and they always turn up. Like, like, eventually you go, oh, cool. Well, if I wouldn't have been able to take this client on had I been working with this dickhead. So it always works out. But yeah, it's something that, if it's not right, you do it. I do it in a really respectful way, and I don't burn bridges.
Yeah.
But if I don't feel I can deliver creativity, good value, and provide what the client wants at the same time, then I'm
You're
very
out.
cautious. There's three things, isn't there? There's like, can you make money? Do you get creative freedom? And do you like the person
Yeah.
or the people? And you have to have at least two out of those three. Like, but I was one or two of them. I was like, I'm down to zero, so it's time to.
I've been there, James. Honestly, it's hard when you start out because you're in that like kind of so desperate for business and revenue,
That's it's a
but it soon takes its toll, and you find that when it starts seeping into your home life, and
yeah.
you know it's just not
Had
worth
it
it.
been in the first 6 months of running the business,
Yeah,
like I wouldn't have been in a privileged place. But I've purposely set it up. I don't pay myself a stupid amount of money. I'm like quite humble with my salary, and I put as much back into the business as I can,
yeah,
so that I've got some screw you money, and that's a real comfort because I know
yeah,
that I could take the next 3 months off if I needed to, you
yeah.
know, because it's like I've spent 4 years just building like a little nest egg there. Um, so hopefully I won't have to take the next 4 months off.
It's a good position to be in.
But yeah, I think it's a nice thing to do,
Yeah,
for everybody really.
agreed, mate. Agreed. Um, we kind of talked about briefly about virality a minute ago. Pulling that back a little bit, do you analyze the content you're putting out? And what I mean by that is, do you look at what's worked, what hasn't, what learnings from it? And I'm assuming the answer is yes, bearing in mind what you said earlier about other people's content. Maybe not. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. No, I do. But it's also very easy to get sucked into the numbers
Yeah,
when actually, like, is the content right for your audience?
yeah,
So like, take reach on LinkedIn in the last month or so, like just like a stone, it just dropped off a cliff. I
yeah,
found that really hard to deal with. I'm like, I'm putting out this post, and like, still lots of people engaging with it, but the reach is terrible. And I took that really personally, and I was like,
yeah.
that's stupid. That's a bloody algorithm that I'm fighting. And so I think it's good to analyze your posts, but not to get too caught up in the numbers. Um, I'll look at some of my cycling videos, and the ones that haven't performed, I'll be like, okay, well, I try and understand why, but I'm not then gonna completely change my video style to
Yeah.
fit in with you know an algorithm, because the algorithm is just going to change again. I'd rather make the content for
How you
me and
want it
my
to be.
audience
Yeah.
than just try and constantly chase
Do you know,
chase.
that's a really good point. Actually, I'm glad you raised because I'm not 100% sure everyone thinks that, and I probably am equally as guilty at times of over analyzing what stuff's done.
Mm,
But what you said is really important because if everything you do is right, YouTube likes this or LinkedIn likes this, as soon as they change their algorithm in 6 months' time, you're a bit screwed, right?
what's the point?
Yeah,
I find it's really interesting. So, talking of like small audiences and the power of them, is
yeah,
I would much rather have like 500 absolute obsessive fans on my email, LinkedIn, Instagram, like,
yeah,
because I will generate revenue from that.
yeah.
So I think I've got less than 300 people on my newsletter, and I don't promote it. It's hardly grown over the years, but it's been the most consistent deliverer of business over the years
Has
in
it
terms of
really?
like
Okay.
a platform. And I'm not selling anything on it. I'm finding videos that have inspired me. I've usually got a thought piece at the top, and it's amazing how many people will go, "Oh, I saw that." You start working with them, like, "Oh, the reason I've got in touch with you is because of this really random bit of content that
Yeah.
didn't perform, but they watched it and they really enjoyed it." And you go, so it's worked. It's done its job. It's delivered a new connection, a new customer.
I
Whereas,
will link to the to the newsletter in the show notes so people can
oh, that's
sign up.
cool. Yeah, that'd be great.
It's like
But
that.
it's
Sorry,
you,
I was going to say there's a story. I don't know if you've seen it about a guy who was putting out YouTube content for a year and he had like 4 or 5 views on every video. and there's like one was his mum, and he just never knew who it was. And it turns out that one of them was Oprah Winfrey. You heard this
Yes,
story?
yes, I have. Where did I hear that?
It might have been on a previous episode. I spoke to someone about it, and I didn't know the guy's name, and I still forget his name. Paul something. He's like a dating coach.
That wasn't on My First Million, was it? Do you listen to that podcast?
Maybe. I occasionally listen to it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure I've heard that story before. Yeah, and
but
then,
exactly to your point, right? You just don't know. You don't need millions of
exactly,
subscribers. You just need that engaged audience.
it's like we've been through the email addresses of like some of the webinars that we run,
Yeah,
and even when they're not brilliantly attended, like there's some huge brands in there, and you're like, oh my goodness, like what does that person do? They work for Nike, and then you
yeah,
find out it's like head of customer experience in the UK or something. Like, oh my god, like so it's just you don't know who's watching,
no,
um, and so it's hard. It feels really personal when there's not lots of likes on
yeah,
there, but it doesn't matter really, as long as you're happy with the content that you've done. Just keep chipping away and enjoy it. Like if you can enjoy the creation,
yeah.
enjoy the process of writing or creating videos, or it's so much more enjoyable.
It's a bit of a generalist question, maybe, but do you think creators as a whole have lost that?
Some have. I see a lot of creators playing the game.
Yeah,
So having that kind of I don't want to use ADHD in the wrong way, but that kind of like instant gratification, very fast editing, bang bang bang, here's all the information type videos,
yeah,
and you're like, oh god, it's an assault on the senses.
yeah.
But those videos work because they're
Retention, right?
yeah. But I'm like, oh, I don't want to make those videos, and so I'd much rather make a really great video that had less views, but I was just really proud of. And I
Do
see a
you,
lot of creators going down that road of going, oh, how do I, you've got to have a hook in the first 2 seconds. I'm like, do you? Like maybe,
does
but
that come back to what you said earlier about your YouTube channel? And when I asked you about mountain bike companies, and you said, oh, maybe if I had more views, then the brands would be like, is the onus on brands? And I've worked brands who look at this sort of stuff and they go, right, he's got X million subscribers. Let's put some money behind him as an influencer, as
yeah,
opposed to how do brands bridge that gap between bigger numbers and highly engaged audiences?
I think brands are smarter these days. I think they used to. So part of the old group that I worked for had like an influencer arm to it,
Right.
and when you were initially having sort of conversations, they'd be like, well, how many followers have they got? And they'd be like, oh, here we go. Whereas those like micro influencers are often way more powerful.
Yeah.
So if I've got two Canyons mountain bikes, and I'm looking at another Canyon. Like if Canyon came to me and said, "Oh, hey James, like, do you want this bike for 12 months? And we want you to make a dozen videos." I'd be like, "Yep, yep, I'll do whatever you want." Like you wouldn't need to pay me. I'd be like, "I'm there. I'm going to go out on my bike now." Like, but because I've got a small audience, it comparatively to a lot. Like,
Yeah.
and I just love doing those smaller people are more grateful for that support. I think when you get to the bigger ones, like that's their business, right? That's their livelihood, and so they
Yeah.
they want to be paid for.
I'm going to tag Canyon into this clip, by the way.
Yes, please. Um, it's a Canyon Spectral that I'm after. Yeah, so I think certainly smaller brands, if they look at those micro influencers, and if you sell, I don't know, I bought some plants for somebody the other day online from a
Yeah.
company called Patch, and a mate of mine, Kirsty, who runs Social Circle in Birmingham. She'd had an operation. I was like, cool, let's send her some plants. She's got like a really engaged following on Instagram, and is like, her house is covered in plants. I'm
Yeah.
like, she'd be the perfect person for Patch to just be like, we're just going to send you a plant, like, because she would instantly post about it, and
Yeah.
be like, oh, we're sorry to hear you've like had a tough time recently. Here's a little plant on us. Like that's a smart move, you know. Whereas arguably they could go after like a home influencer with 1 million
Yeah.
subscribers and pay them a bunch of money, and it's about being smart, just making sure that the people you're working with are the are the right audience, kind of thing. So
I 100% agree with
yeah, one of these days there'll be a big box arrive from Canyon.
that.
Let's just get that in there again. Canyon Spectral.
I will link to James's channel in the show notes in case anyone from Canyon just happens to be perusing YouTube in their lunch
uh,
hour.
one of these
No,
days. One of
if you
these
don't
days.
ask, you don't get, James.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Let's talk about struggles
Yeah,
in this world of authenticity. It's not all rainbows, and I mean, you shared a bit about your struggles yesterday, right? Sometimes getting in the funk, but what is something you struggle with or find tough?
I think there's an element of imposter syndrome. I think it's probably quite a common thing.
Mm,
Um, but I look back to where I started the business compared to the skill set that I've got now. It's moved on a lot, but I still get caught in that thing where I'm like looking at, you know, comparison is the thief of joy, isn't it?
yeah,
But you end up comparing yourself to other people and then going, oh man, just should I be doing this? Am I getting a bit old for it? Like, am I good enough?
yeah.
And
Do you
that
regularly think that, or is it something that just pops its head up every now and again?
uh, it comes in waves. I think when
Yeah,
I'm really busy, no, doesn't
yeah,
doesn't even pop into my head. But the second it goes a bit quiet, and work can be lumpy sometimes. It can,
yeah,
I can get like times where I'm like, oh god, I can't do this. I've got too much on. In fact, Casey Neistat did a brilliant video recently where he's that balance of
yeah.
he's bored and like in a
On the
funk.
tree, on the tree with his
That's
thing, wasn't
it.
it? Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And then he's like too busy, overstimulated, needs to cut back, and he just
yeah,
seesaws from one side to the other. I was like, oh, I feel seen. I think that's probably my biggest struggle is that maybe a bit of time management as well. I can flip from one thing to another. Um,
yeah.
and actually, when you're editing, you need deep work. You need to be like no distractions.
Do you work from home?
I do now. Yeah, I worked in WeWork for a long time,
Yeah.
pre COVID. But yeah, I was
Uh,
just finding again. I think that was just an ego thing. I was just like, oh, yeah, I've got a nice office, and
yeah.
it was
How,
a nice environment. Met lots of nice people, but then of course lockdown happened, and we got a Labrador. So
how does the fact of working from home with young kids and getting into that deep work state impact you?
my working day isn't like a 9 to 5 day anymore, which
Yeah.
I found a real wrench to go from years of being quite regimented with time to.
Mm,
So I'll walk the youngest to school quite often on quite a few of the mornings. There's usually a dog walk in there somewhere during the day,
yeah.
and then the kids will get home, and they'll come into my office, and there'll be all those distractions. But sometimes if I've got, and I'm quite creative on an evening, so
Yeah.
sometimes like we'll have dinner, and I'm like, right, I'm going to go and put my headphones on and go and work, and wife's very good at like just giving me the time,
Yeah.
and I might sit on an evening and work till like 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night sometimes, and I'm quite happy doing that because I'm in a flow, and I'm enjoying the process. I'm enjoying the editing, and clients might find it a bit weird that they get an email from me at like 20 past 10 after it's rendered out. I'm like, oh,
They'd be like,
what are
oh,
you doing?
this guy's dedicated.
Yeah, or he's not organised. Like his business is badly run, but actually,
Yeah.
it's just I think it's the kind of modern world, isn't it? We're a bit more flexible.
No, it is. And do you know what? I think you said something important there is you work well in the evenings. And I think a lot of people, I have, I mean, I'm not at that 100% all day. I find when I first get up, I'm quite effective. Like you, I do my good work in the evenings as well. And I think this concept of 9 to 5 for me never really worked
Mm,
because I know, and it's only since working myself and working at home, I've kind of noticed it more. But you notice when you're more effective and when you're least effective.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Um, I just want to go back to the imposter syndrome quickly because there will be people listening and watching this who suffer from the same thing. And I don't know if it's a quick answer or not, but how do you when those waves do hit, how do you get through them?
I mean, they're not. It's not always easy, um, but I think for me, like isolation is a bad thing.
Okay.
So you need to almost circuit break, like because usually, I think you can get into a bit of a downward spiral in your head where you're
Yep.
like, oh, I'm shit, oh, I'm not going to do any work, and it just goes down and down and down. And by the time like my family get home at the end of the day, I'm like, hi. And they're like, how's your day? Oh, rubbish. And it's like, oh, okay. Why has it been rubbish? Well, it's just because I've been chatting to myself in my head.
Yeah.
Um, so as I said earlier, in our chat, going mountain biking last night, just switch, and I'm back to being me.
Yep.
We're not talking about work. We're on the bikes. We're out having fun. As I say, Joe is a brilliant, brilliant person to have in my life. Elle, who works for me, and Joe, she's another just absolute legend that always sees the positive in it. And so I think just trying to circuit break things, just like put down the thing that you're trying to do and go and do something else,
Yep.
and come back to it when you've got a bit more energy behind it. But yeah, or just hang out with Joe Glover.
Yeah, he does have that effect on people, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Joe Glover for
Okay.
Prime Minister.
Yeah, he could be one day. I wonder if I know the answer to this one already, but if you could shadow one video creator for the day, who would it be and why?
Well, you're expecting me to say Casey Neistat.
No, I don't think you're going to be that obvious.
No, well, the thing is, like, Casey would be great, but I've done his course and I've effectively shadowed him for a day. Like, I've seen how he does it.
Yep.
There's a guy who we had on the webinar called Beau Miles.
When Joe sent me that, I'm a massive Beau Miles fan.
Same.
When
That's why he was
Joe,
on. I was like, I love Beau Miles. I said to Joe, I was like, can we have him on as a guest? And he was like, yeah, drop him an email. So I dropped him an email. I was like, hi Beau, really like your videos. Do you want to be
when
on a marketing podcast? And he was like, yeah, all right, mate. I was like, what?
me and my wife watch it, so he's another one up there with Casey. When that notification bell
Yeah.
goes, it's so my wife's not really into Casey like that, but when Beau drops his videos that night, we are watching it on the telly.
Yeah.
And I remember when Joe sent that email, and I was sitting in the kitchen. My wife was getting the kids breakfast. The kids were behind me. So I got a 3 and a 5-year-old. I usually well 2, whatever, I don't know. And I was like, "What the fuck?" My wife was like, "What was going on?" And I was like, "They've got fucking Beau Miles." She's like, "No way." That's the one and only marketing meetup my wife has watched, by the way.
That's
There's no
brilliant.
slant on the marketing meetup. She's just not into marketing. And I was like, "Oh, you bastards! I can't." I was so jealous.
I was like, I have to be on that one, Joe. I have to be on that one. He's an absolute hero. But I also, I watch his films. A as just a huge fan,
Yeah,
but B as somebody who makes videos. I'm just I want to know more about how about his process, because he covers a lot off in the edit by doing voiceovers. So
yeah,
he almost stitches the narrative into his films afterwards.
yeah.
But I'm like, he's got to have an idea of what he's doing beforehand, because it's so brilliantly shot. And I want to know where on that sliding scale those films fit, because it can't come across. Maybe he's just a real natural storyteller, but
Maybe you should reach out to Mitch. Get Mitch's.
yeah.
Speak to him.
Well, I think Beau's coming over to the UK, so Joe and I were like, "Oh, we're going to go and meet him, like do something somewhere."
Yeah, he is, because I think I emailed him afterwards. After that marketing meetup, said, "Look, I just want to drop you a note, say how chuffed I was to see you on the marketing meetup, been following your videos." And he replied, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I'm coming over to do a tour." I
Right?
was like, "Brilliant,
Yeah,
get
yeah,
tickets for that."
yeah. I think I'm definitely going to get tickets to go and see him. Such a fanboy.
Because
But yeah,
he makes videos like you said about, he doesn't conform to this cut
exactly that.
retention, and he's part of this. I don't know if you've seen it, but the YouTube new wave. Have you heard of that?
No.
So there's a couple of guys in the States who, if you search hashtag YouTube new wave,
Yeah.
oh, what's it? I can't remember what his name is. It's gonna frustrate me, but basically they're going up against those kind of YouTube videos because they want it to be more slower paced, and
Yeah. It's
there is some good
proper.
ones.
It's proper storytelling. It's storytelling
Yeah,
in its finest form. Like he can make a story about a piece of wood that he's turned into a paddle,
yeah.
or collecting junk from the side of the road and taking it to the tip. Like you go, well, that doesn't sound very interesting. Like it's a freaking brilliant video.
His honestly, I came. I will share it in the show notes for anyone who's wondering what me and you are fanboying about here. But there was one. There's a YouTuber I follow called Laura Try who did this video running a mile an hour for 24 hours.
Okay.
And I started watching it, and she says in the video, she goes, "Oh, I got this inspiration from Beau Miles." I was like, "Oh, I've never heard of Beau Miles." And I watched that video. He did his version of that.
Yeah.
She was inspired by. And I think that night, me and my wife literally sat and watched
All of them.
pretty much his entire YouTube catalog with like 4 hours worth of. I was just like, this.
Yeah.
He is incredibly good to watch.
The first one I watched was Run the Line.
Yeah,
So the
the
old
train line
railway
one. Yeah,
line,
yeah,
and just the combination of like he's really smart with his music choices. You
yeah,
wouldn't even notice them, but like just the pace is beautiful. He's very human in his way. Like I still got that at the end of him running that line. He's sat in like an old disused railway station, and he's talking to a magpie,
yeah. Eating
and
an
he's
apple
just
we found on the floor.
yeah, exactly, and he's just having this like it's not scripted. It's what I'm trying to create in human in its purest form.
Yeah.
Like he could do what I'm trying to do 10 times better. Absolute legend.
Do you think about his stuff when you're doing your cycling videos?
Yeah. So if you take the video that I did for the course, the trail dog video,
Yeah.
that I did, that was part of the Casey Neistat course. It's got an element of Beau inspired sort of not scripting, but storytelling in there. It's
Right.
not as good as Beau's, but it's performed really well.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely, and hence I want to do.
I'll link to that as well. But oh God, I have some links for this
Yeah,
video.
if you like, yeah, if you like dogs, if you like overexcited Labradors, then you'll like that video.
Was Joe familiar with Beau Miles before you suggested?
No, it was one I introduced to him, which he's very grateful for.
Because I think
obviously.
I actually sent. Did I send Joe that book? I think I sent Joe Beau Miles' book.
Oh, did you?
Like for the life of me, I cannot remember why I sent it to him. I think I must have been talking about Beau Miles on the podcast.
Yeah.
But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I wondered if he was a fan as a result.
Oh, he loves him. Absolutely loves him.
Does he?
Yeah. So
Good
yeah,
answer.
hopefully one day we'll get to meet him.
Got a picture video idea to him. He went to Canada to do. So he was doing the US Canada tour. Did you see the one he did where he was in the canoe with the homemade canoe in the Rocky Mountains?
Yeah.
See, that's what you need to do. You need to come up with an equivalent idea.
In the UK.
Yeah.
Taking mountain biking, couldn't I?
You could do.
Watch my channel explode. Collab.
That's the answer, mate. Right. I'm conscious of your time. I don't want to talk about Beau Miles for the next 2 hours. If someone came up to you and said they wanted to, I'll let you take this where you want. Either start a video marketing agency or start a YouTube channel. What would you say to them?
Well, I think the most common desire is to start a YouTube channel. I'm not sure that many people. Generally, the route people go for making their own video agency is they've learned how to use a camera. They're a camera operator in a bigger business, and they go out on their own freelance. That's kind of typical. I would say, in fact, if you wanted to do either, I would start a YouTube channel. Like if I had time on my hands, or if I could do it all again, I would probably start a YouTube channel that was about making videos and my journey of learning to make videos, because that probably would have been set me up better for running human. My advice would be, don't overthink it. Just do it. Just make or make, half a dozen to a dozen videos and then see how you feel about it.
Yeah.
Because my guess is a lot of people will make one or two. They never actually hit upload, or they do and they don't get any results because they've got no audience.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to just keep posting to understand how it works,
Yeah.
right? And then all of a sudden you'll get one video that does really well, and you'll be like, huh. And then you'll notice that a load of followers like join you, and then when you hit 1,000, you can monetize it. And so, every so often I get a little check for 30 quid from YouTube, and
What was the first video you remember that did that?
that really took off was the second video I ever made. It was the Can It Chase one, which
Okay.
still performs now, still brings in a lot of views now. So yeah, I just think, but also I call it a gateway. Like, find something that you really care about and that
Yeah.
you're really interested in, and make videos around that. So it might be like looking behind you, like model cars. It might be that you're like obsessed with reading or
Yeah.
cookery, but just find your gateway, find the thing that you care about, and then making the videos becomes a lot easier because you'll find your audience naturally.
I think a lot of people don't believe there's an audience out there. Don't, like, if they said, "Oh, I want to do about model cars," but beauty of YouTube and the internet is
There's an
there
audience
are
for
some
everything.
real
There's some
engagement.
right weirdos out there. Like, there's some really niche channel. To give you an
Yeah.
example, the channel that Nick works on makes rap videos, like nerdcore rap videos about computer games, and they've got nearly 3 million subscribers.
Wowzers.
And every time I watch one of the, I'm like, I don't get this. It's like Minecraft rap. It's just odd. But a big audience for it, and the guy makes a hell of a lot of money from it. So just find your thing you
Write
care
that
about.
one down in my ideas book.
Rap videos about marketing.
Yeah. Never know, mate.
Yeah,
Never
well,
know.
I might write that one down myself, actually.
Right, that's good advice. Last question for you, James. If we spoke again in 12 months and you said to me, "Do you know what, Chris? It's been a pretty good year," what would have happened?
I think I would have got back into that rhythm of creating cycling content. Canyon would have delivered a bike to me. Obviously, I wouldn't have to pay for it, which is what I'm currently going through the process of doing.
I'm gonna have
Yeah,
to mark this video up as a hashtag ad, aren't
sponsored content.
I?
It's really not. They do make great bikes. Yeah, I think I would have got back into my groove of uploading because I
Yeah.
miss doing that. Being a bit more flexible around which shoots I go on and which edits I have to do. Building like a little bit more of a freelance team that can help me with that. And probably spending a little bit more time in the Marketing Meetup as well. That's so much fun, and like I love working with Joe so much that I just want to kind of do more of that. But as long as I'm healthy and happy and fit, and and still able to pay the bills, then I'll be happy with that in 12 months.
That is a lovely answer and a lovely place to finish. James, I want to thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
I, it's like I said to you, I can't remember if I'd hit record by this point or not. I followed you for a while now, and like I said, I've subscribed to your channel, and obviously I know your channel, and I'm not just saying that because I've referenced some pretty niche videos, but it's always lovely to get people on who you sort of see knocking around online.
Yeah.
And I am a fan of your content. I really am. And I'm not just
Oh,
saying that
thank
because
you.
you're here today. I wouldn't have
That's
asked you
really
on
nice.
otherwise. But um, if I want to put another link in the show notes, where would I direct people to come and say hi?
I don't know, really. If you're into cycling, then Original Cyclist on Instagram and YouTube. And then if it's kind of more businessy marketing stuff, then probably LinkedIn
Okay.
would be the easiest one. Yeah, and if you want to see interesting videos that I found, most of them will be links to Beau Miles, but that newsletter goes out once a month.
I will. I'll put
That's
a
kind
link
of
to that.
marketing inspiration-y stuff, but just some musings from me, really. No hard
I will
sell.
link to it all below, and
You're a
people
good
can
one.
pick and choose what they want to come and say. But James, thank you
Thanks,
so
mate.
much for your time.
Oh, it's a pleasure, and thank you.